kick off with Sheridan talking with Dr. Franklin about how lucky it was that he managed to make it back to Babylon 5, what with being a helpless prisoner of Clark and all that. He said he just worked with his contact in the Mars Resistance, except that this isn't really Franklin who's asking him about it. It's one of the interrogators. They're using drugs, not going for some Mission Impossible type stuff here. But even that's not enough to get him to admit that alien governments were pulling the strings all along. So the assistant suggests using his father against him, threaten his life if he doesn't cooperate. But Not Franklin points out that's an unacceptable risk. Yeah, you could get him to capitulate, but what if you don't? Then you're screwed. Then you either have to pull the trigger, which deepens his resentment and resolve, or you don't pull the trigger, and you undermine your position by not backing up your threats.
We don't want cooperation. We want conversion. We want repentance.
It's not enough that you get people to kneel. You need to change them so they want to be on their knees. Meanwhile, Garibaldi is in a really bad spot. Everyone knows him as the guy who betrayed Sheridan. The organization he was part of has been wiped out. He's got nobody in his corner right now. He's about as comfortable as the Wicked Witch of the West being taught to juggle water balloons. He's hoping that maybe talking to the Martian resistance might help. Thanks for the help. After the titles. Man, I hope that's not a queue forming, or this is going to be a long afternoon.
Sister, please, I'll handle this.
Number 1 soon arrives with Franklin.
Stephen?
I'm starting to notice a trend here. Garibaldi tries explaining what happened, but everybody is skeptical of "I was mind-controlled" as a defense. He has nothing to back up his story but his word, which is worth about as much as the 2 pennies that can be placed on his eyes at the funeral. Finally, desperate, he asks to have Lita scan him. He's really back against the wall, if that's his idea. Right now, yeah, he's got brickwork crawling up his asshole. I think the time has come to go for drastic measures. It's going to require some persuasion to go along with that, though. Hey, at least no one punched him that time. Things are looking up. There are blocks up to stop this, a level that only a Psy-Cop could put in place. But with a lot of pushing, Lita can break them down and get to the truth. When number 1 says that this doesn't change anything, Lita dumps everything she took into her mind too, and now all of a sudden it's kind of hard to shoot him, knowing that, yeah, he actually was a victim.
Let him go.
Oh, sorry, force of habit. Meanwhile, Ivanova is still leading the fleet, now against a pair of Earth ships that had participated in innocent deaths. But they still give them a chance to surrender and only open fire once the other side does. It's nice to have the moral high ground and the metaphorical high ground, too. This is going to pop up in a little bit. Back on Mars, Garibaldi had, during the pleading for his life, said that he knew where Sheridan was being kept and how to get him out. Well, now we're getting down to the details, and it's, I can get him out, provided you can get me in. I just don't know how we could do that. But the thing on their side is that the evil dictator has been painting Garibaldi as a hero, so the cops are inclined to trust him. But the people that know this area that are in the resistance, they're not available right now, and they're stretched too thin to commit to this in the first place. So they can escort them to the site, but then the 3 of them are going to be on their own, having to sort out the question mark that comes between go there and escape on their blackboard. Back on Babylon 5, remember that place? Lanier tells Delenn that Londo has called a meeting of the League of Non-Aligned Worlds without telling them about it. In fact, the meeting's already started. They arrive just as he announces to everyone that the Centauri intend to lead the way. But unless it's to a new hairstylist, I'd be nervous too. Actually, it's a unified decision to help Sheridan in his hour of need, the way that he had been for them during their own hour of need during the war. If Sheridan's forces lose, it's pointed out, Earth will go from bringing them together to turning against them outright.
Politically, it is very wise.
Morally, it is even wiser.
Politics and morality.
On the same side? That doesn't happen every day, Dylan.
The reason Delenn was kept out of this is to have it on the record that this decision had nothing to do with her, and hence had nothing to do with her personal relationship with Sheridan. The Council and the League took action because it was the right thing, not because it was a personal thing. Together, they can go save Sheridan, and right now, he can use the help.
All right, well, you sure you know where you're going?
Anytime you want to head back, just say the word.
If she looks familiar to you, she did appear in 2 episodes of Stargate SG-1. But even more importantly for us, this is the lady that gave Harry Kim a space STD. I never forget a face, especially when it's connected to Harry's personal shame. As a matter of fact, thinking about this in greater detail, I am sorely tempted to create a 6 degrees of Harry's shame to cover future instances to point out how someone is connected to some horribly embarrassing part of Harry Kim's life. Anyway, things get harder because there's been more quakes lately. Blasting new tunnels is having an effect on stability. And I've played enough video games to know this will require a lot of careful tuck and roll to avoid the falling rocks. After a little arguing over who drank more from the canteen and who was a better liar, she drops them off at the tunnel that will lead them where they need to go. This is definitely starting to feel a little Elder Scrolls here, but they're almost there. They can just be careful. So as the team is working to go through the sewers and avoid the cave-ins, we should get back to Ivanova. She said one of the reasons they do these runs on the smaller units is that there's always a few that want to turn. But she makes it really hard for this guy, who says the captain's the one who ordered the attack despite their reservations. Finally, he says he's got information that he's hoping might be mitigating circumstances. Not all defectors are really defecting, he says. They're working for Clark. Now, of course, if Sheridan were to win, they could probably just stroll along and whistle and never be discovered. But in the meantime, it means that Clark knows that they're heading for Mars, and what their plans are, and so is preparing for the attack. What's more, they'll be using cutting-edge ships, brand new technology, and crewed by the most devoted followers of the New Order. Real assholes. The problem is that the rendezvous for Mars is already in motion. There's no changing it now. So the ships that head in will be ambushed against the superior ships that know their own vessel's weaknesses. So there is no choice but to go ahead as planned and hope they can ambush the ambushers before they have the chance to ambush. Back on Mars, the trio run into a patrol, just 2 guys, but Garibaldi gets stabbed in the lower back. Franklin can stitch him up, but it may shock you to learn that these are not ideal circumstances. And that does not even count the fact that Garibaldi is using an out-of-network medical provider. Meanwhile, Ivanova lets the defected fleet know what's happening and why the White Star Fleet needs to engage these new ships. Because if the Earth ships are wiped out, that eliminates the tangible symbol that this conflict isn't driven by alien aggressors, but by humans fighting to save their world from tyranny. All well and good, but Ivanova is going into battle with no sleep. That's not good. And she's not going to take the chance to nap first. Not unless Marcus forces the issue.
Well, let me put it to you this way. You can either get 4 hours and 59 minutes rest, or 4 hours and 59 minutes of me bothering you about it.
You wouldn't.
I love to go swimming with bow-legged women and swim between their legs. While she goes to sleep, Franklin and Lita arrive, in uniform, in the security sector where they have Sheridan. Garibaldi explains they're here for an off-the-record stroll around the block, and the doctor is here in case Sheridan should happen to trip and fall rather hard. Given his reputation, the guy at the door buys it, but the ones guarding the actual prisoner, they're another story.
Maybe you saw me on ISM.
I don't watch TV. It's a cultural wasteland filled with inappropriate metaphors and an unrealistic portrayal of life created by the liberal media elite.
My brother said the exact same thing when he found out SpongeBob didn't live in a pineapple under the sea. Lita gets the codes from one of their heads, so they take out the guards, unlock the door, and grab Sheridan. They try and fail to talk their way out, and in the shooting, Sheridan gets a gun, which normally might help, but rarely has anyone ever said, "You know what the problem with that guy tripping balls is? He's not armed." There, that's the last time he'll call me crazy. Back in the fleet, Ivanova gets woken up, has a heart-to-heart with Marcus about the time that he complimented her in Minbari, words that she now understands what they mean. But I'm afraid we've got a war to fight, and it's not going to be easy. Turns out that while the White Star fleet is Minbari enhanced with Vorlon tech, Clark's new fleet is human enhanced with Shadow tech.
I am Susan Ivanova, Commander. I am the right hand of vengeance. I am death incarnate. And the last living thing that you are ever going to see.
She really needed a few more hours of sleep. So they fight, then they fight, then they fight, then they fight, but not without paying a price. A chunk of bad guy hits the flagship, trashing the bridge, and Marcus has to carry a badly battered Ivanova from the burning wreckage to get treatment. They get her to one of the Minbari ships, and soon Sheridan arrives as well, much to Delen's relief.
Are you sure you're...
I'm fine. Fine. It wasn't that bad.
Although I'm never eating a sandwich with mustard as long as I live. Ivanova's not looking good. In fact, the end is inevitable now. She has a chance to speak to Sheridan about what they achieved, how they've cleared the way, and she's clearly proud of it, despite the cost. She only asks that Sheridan command the final battle from their old ship, the Agamemnon. And with that, we sail off into the big-ass battle, which we'll get to in the appropriately titled Endgame.